Citizenship. It's a word we all know very well, but do we know what it really means? Is there one set definition of citizenship, or does it vary from culture to culture? We set out to find an answer to these questions, and by doing so, we interviewed a prestigious man of our local community, Dr. Arne Vainio. Dr. Arne Vainio is an Ojibwe physician who works on the Fond du Lac Reservation in northern Minnesota. He is an enrolled member of the Mille Lacs Band of Ojibwe in Minnesota. He is also of the Eagle Clan. Dr. Vainio is known for his documentary film called Walking into the Unknown, a film he made because he was frustrated by middle-aged Native men not coming in for health screenings. He then came into the realization that he was also avoiding the necessary screenings. The film is based on Dr. Arne Vainio's 49th and 50th years of life, a critical turning point in the lives of many American Indian males, when it is important to become earnestly involved in finding out more about the ways in which their health and well-being are at risk, and developing ways to practice healthier choices. We were pleased to have Dr. Vainio give his shared wisdom on this subject.
I'm Arne Vainio. I am a physician on the Fond du Lac Reservation in Cloquet, Minnesota. Been there for 16 years, and I love what I do.
How would you define citizenship? Let's ask Dr. Vainio.
Citizenship is it's part of being a part of the greater collective. So people can get by just doing their own thing and taking care of their families and all that, but at some point it becomes important to just be a part of the bigger community, and I get to do that pretty much on a daily basis.
Do you think there's a limit to how many citizenships you can be a part of?
I think they're so in flux all the time that, I suppose just in how much time limits people, but but I think again, just like that, going from being sacred to being hilarious, in a couple of breaths, I think the same thing. I think that stuff is in flux. My citizenship, when I was a little kid, my father died when I was 4, and he was Finnish, and then my grandmother died when I was 21, I think, and then my Finnishness just kind of fizzled right out. And then every once in a while I'd see somebody, it happens less and less all the time, but I'd see somebody that said, "I remember you when you were this big," and then I was Finnish for 5 minutes, and then when they left, then I wasn't Finnish anymore. And in 2010, we actually took Walking into the Unknown, the film, to Finland, and it really resonated there. And it got such a big reception, and ever since then, my Finnishness is a big part of me. So it's so citizenship is it is community citizenship. It is local. But it's bigger than that. Native American people have one of the highest rates of military service of any ethnic group, and Native people respect their country, and even that respect hasn't always been returned. People that practice their traditions and try to maintain and preserve those traditions within the community, those are important people. And but there's citizens, I think, and I can't speak for everybody, but I'm a citizen of the Mille Lacs Band of Ojibwe is where I'm enrolled. I'm a community member on the Fond du Lac Reservation where I work, and I'm certainly a part of the community there. And but also I'm a Minnesota state citizen and a United States citizen, and when it comes to looking at some of the things that Native American people really hold dear is looking at the way we're treating our planet. The earth is our mother, and we're disrespecting her, and we're paying for it.
Dr. Vainio mentions he's part of 5 citizenships. How many citizenships are you part of? How has someone else's active civic duty affected your life? Let's see what Dr. Vainio has to say.
I came from poverty, and I came from alcohol, and my father committed suicide when I was 4. My mother had diabetes. I mean, all this tragedy. She was on dialysis for years. She had a kidney transplant. She died the night that I graduated from residency. You know, there's tragedy in my family history, and in my past. But you know, I've been given this opportunity to be a physician, and I didn't do this. I didn't do this alone. I did this from, you know, other people helping me, guiding me, just stopping me sometimes and saying, "What are you doing? You're wasting your life," and you know, or taking me in. You know, I had a family in Duluth. Jay Newcomb and his wife, Mary V, and their kids. Jay was working at the University of Minnesota in Duluth in the Indian Studies program. I was, you know, back in those days for college, you had to sign up for classes, not online. You stood in line, and hundreds of people in line in the gymnasium, and then they had card catalogs and you had to flip through the boxes, and you know, when class filled up, that was it. You're done, and that line would stop, and everybody would run for the next best line. I didn't have a next best line. I had a green duffel bag, too shy to ask a question, run for another line. It would fill up, and Jay Newcomb saw me as exactly what I was, this lost Indian kid. And he came and he got me and he said, "Why don't you sign up for my classes, and then you can add, you know, you can transfer out of them and transfer into the classes that you want over a couple of weeks." And that's what I was able to do. And then he saw the green duffel bag and he said, "You know, where are you staying?" And I had to admit that I didn't think that far ahead. And he said, "Why don't you stay with us for a little while?" That little while turned out to be 2 years. You know, I mean, who does that for people? You know, I mean, that's a citizenship thing. You know, that was his citizenship to me, but also globally. You know, I wouldn't be sitting here if it wasn't for him and his family. You know, I wouldn't be sitting here if it wasn't for, you know, a double handful of people that, you know, as I write articles and as I do other things that, you know, I'm naming names as I go, you know, for all the people that did that for me. People should share their gifts, you know, and everybody has those things. You know, and people should, you know, they should look for the path that, you know, your path is open, but once you're on the right one, you really know it. And then once you're on that, I think, you know, people should, you know, they should share their gifts within that. As a physician, certainly I have a pretty esteemed place in the community, you know, in any community really, and you know, you need to respect that position. You know, I can't just be ethical and honest and all the other things that people expect of us as a physician. You know, that doesn't shut off at 4:30 or 5 o'clock. You know, I mean, that has to be there all the time, and you know, that has to be there for, you know, I have to be able to recognize that same kid that I was a long time ago. You know, and you know, when I was younger, I was running wild. I mean, when I was 17 or 18 years old, there was no indication that I would ever be a physician, ever. And you know, and I have to be able to stop and look at a kid that age doing the same sorts of things and see if there's, you know, if I think there's a way to convince that kid, you know, that there's a different path. You know, this is a great country, you know, and you know, in spite of squabbles in Washington and budget ceilings and deficits and all that sort of stuff, you know, we still, you know, we lead the world in a lot of things because, you know, we have the freedom to express our ideas, you know, to act on those ideas, and we have, I think, an obligation, you know, to that part of our citizenship that doesn't have those things. And my son, who's 15 and quite a bit taller than I am now, you know, since he was just a little guy, 4 years old probably, you know, we go to breakfast every Saturday morning, and we take any of his friends that want to go with us. I mean, any of them. And, you know, now they're 15 and they're too cool to go have breakfast, but we still go have breakfast, you know, I still go with a friend of mine. You know, and any time, you know, they're welcome to come with us, and they're welcome to come back to that any time. And, you know, and in the video I state that, I don't know how to prevent suicide, but I think the way to do it is to have breakfast every Saturday morning. And I think that is the way to do it. That's citizenship.
Do you have any traditions you view as citizenship?
I think as a doctor, sometimes I'm a little bit weird as a doctor because I think in medicine, there's a general expectation, and it's always, traditionally been, not traditionally native, but traditionally medicine. Doctors wear a tie and a white coat, and you call them doctor, and they're a different part of society, and I tried that for a while, but it doesn't really work. At some point, then I become part of the community, and which is the way that I want to do it, and so, from a citizenship standpoint, that way, when we first moved here, we went to this, we got invited to this big doctor holiday party thing, and they had the ice sculpture and all the glass things, and valets parking it, and I like old cars, and I found this old truck that was all rusty, and the exhaust was bad and all that stuff, and I pulled that thing up when they're parking all these limousines and everything else. And that's what I had, was this old rattle trap of a truck, and I pulled that thing up, and we just hung our, just had a regular old jacket, and we hung that up, and my wife and I went and sat in this big fancy party with all these doctors, and I have never felt more non-citizen-y than that. Just so out of place, so totally out of place, and I was the only one of those things we ever went to, and and again, it's not that there's anything wrong with that, getting dressed up and all that sort of stuff, and all that opulence, and that was there. It's people earned that, by going to med school and doing all the other stuff they do, and but at the same time, I still couldn't walk into. I've been a physician practicing for 16 years, over 16 years. And I still couldn't walk into one of those things and feel comfortable.
Arne says he doesn't always fit in as a doctor. Do you ever feel you don't fit in a citizenship you're part of? We asked Dr. Vainio if he thinks traditions change. Here's what he had to say.
Traditions do change. If you look at traditions, whether any traditions, even some of the older Ojibwe traditions, some of that stuff gets changed, and they get changed with each generation, and but there's a lot of stuff that's, that we try to hold as traditional, but, the world is changing, and even a lot of traditions for other cultures change as the world changes, and gets more globalized, and civic duty is, it's an important thing, and it's, when there's communities, if you look at traditional communities, native-wise, from a Native American perspective, grandmothers and grandfathers teach, if somebody's going to teach our stories, typically it's one of the extreme elders, teaches the youngest in the family, because they'll be there the longest, to carry those things. And, that's part of being a citizen, is making sure that that stays, and, and people have roles in the community, and whether it's harvesting things and all that sort of stuff, and, but now we're different, we don't harvest things, and, wild ricing, and certainly there's, fishing and some other things, but there are very few people that do that all the time. Most people go to the store, and in that, traditional roles change, and they're always in flux, and but we still have, obligations, to the greater community, and I think even Native people, not Finnish people, everybody, certainly people can have a strong national pride about things, and I know a lot of people that Finnish, and they have they go to Finnish festivals and all that sort of stuff. But at the same time, you know, they realize that, you know, they just can't be Finnish all the time. You know, that they, you know, that they do have an obligation to the rest of the, you know, pay taxes and whatever else, you know, and be involved and look at things.
Do you think civic duty is dying as well? With so many different citizenships, we asked Dr. Vainio if he thinks they ever conflict.
Sometimes, you know, and sometimes it's certainly at odds with each other. And you know, when somebody's trying to take away treaty rights, or, you know, now, you know, that Native American people have had casinos for, you know, a couple of decades, you know, and they've been successful. You know, now, I mean, you don't have to look at very far to see governors that are trying to, you know, do something about that or cut in on that, or, you know, state-run casinos or state-run whatever, you know. And as soon as they do that, they're going to put that in a major metropolitan center. And, you know, and then all that traveling to the tribes to do that that'll go away. You know, so that's, you know, people are working on eroding that, you know. So, and, you know, the tribes, they're smart enough to know that they diversify and they buy hotels and they buy other things, and you know, businesses to try to, you know, to try to survive. You know, if you look at reservations, typically reservations, you know, Native people have been pushed off of land. Look at the Black Hills. You know, in the Black Hills it says treasure, but, you know, the Lakota people got pushed off of that, and they got pushed onto the most desolate piece of property in the United States. You know, if you look at Pine County, where Pine Ridge is, that is the poorest county in the United States. Unemployment is 95%. You know, I mean, what are they going to do? They can't do anything. And you know, and somebody's always looking to take something away. And, you know, so that part of my citizenship, sometimes, you know, I mean, parts of my own citizenship are at odds with each other, because, you know, those things were, you know, things that were not promised in treaties, things that were negotiated, you know, in good faith. Native American people have always lived in harmony, I think, with, you know, with the world around them. And the world around us is changing. You know, we don't have reasons to have warriors on horseback going after somebody. You know, I mean, we can have Native American lawyers. Yeah. And, you know, and we can have, you know, people that know how to use that system, you know, work within that system. And, you know, but at the same time, you know, we are part of the, you know, the greater collective. And, you know, that's the way I feel. You know, I'm proud to be an American citizen. You know, I just said this morning when I was talking to the first-year students the medical students at UMD, you know, I'm a native physician, and I'm proud of that, and I'm proud in that order. And it does make a difference to me.
What we learned from Dr. Vainio is that there is no set definition of citizenship. Your citizenship can be given through being born into your community, but what citizenship really means is being more than just part of your community. A citizen gives back to their community, and it is what you give back to your community that makes up your civic duty. Dr. Vainio would not be where he is today if it was not from another man reaching his citizenship out to him. Nor would any of us be where we are today if it wasn't for the citizenships we are part of.